Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us in the latest Boutique Hotel News webinar. And today we are going to be talking about designing for health and well-being. My name's Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of Boutique Hotel News, and we are an online trade publication, and we cover the global boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry, including branded residences. Today's webinar is sponsored by revenue strategy platform Duetto, and we do have a short video to play for you today.
Let's face it, hospitality has changed. Booking patterns are erratic, events hijack demand, guests expect more, spend less, and book late. Labor short, costs are up, and the world is...
Heathrow Airport will be closed.
Well,
Coronavirus.
The AI experts,
Terrorist. Flooding.
unpredictable. And revenue leaders are being asked to do more with less, across more teams, more systems, and more pressure, which leads to disconnected systems, manual workarounds, siloed insights. All because most hotels are still trying to solve new problems with old tools. It's not working. Modern hotels don't need another product. They need a smarter way to run revenue. One platform, smarter pricing,
Let's include the rest of that video in our follow-up email where you can learn all more about Duetto, and further details about Duetto have also been popped into the chat. A quick overview of how today's webinar is going to run. We'll spend around 45 minutes chatting with our speakers today, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from our audience. So please do get involved in the conversation. We'd love to hear also your thoughts and your own contributions. So submit any questions that you have via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. I'll get round to asking those as and when relevant. Today's webinar is being recorded. Everyone that has registered will receive a copy of that recording afterwards. And if you do have some time at the end, we would really appreciate your feedback. We'll be running a very quick 5-minute survey which will pop up on your screens just as you log off. Again, would value any input that you guys have. We're always looking to improve what we do here. So let's meet our panelists, and for ease, I'm going to ask each to introduce themselves from left to right as per the PowerPoint slide. So let's kick off with Tasha. Over to you and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really great to be with you all. I'm Tasha Golden. I was a touring singer-songwriter for many years. I got really curious about what was happening during those shows. You know, what draws us as humans to these kinds of experiences? How do they affect our brains, our bodies, the ways that we relate to each other, the way we show up in the world in general? And that curiosity led me to a PhD in public health, specializing in the impacts of creativity, arts, culture, aesthetics on our health and well-being, including how we think and how we work, how we lead change, both individually and as organizations. So these days I get to help clients around the globe apply that science in the real world, often in unexpected ways, like with workplace design or signature experiences, brand development, community initiatives. So thrilled to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. And Rahul, over to you. Welcome. Oh, pop yourself off mute if you can. There we go.
Eloise, thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me on this discussion today. My name is Rahul Shankhwalker. I am a partner with Hirsch Bedner and Associates, HBA for short. Roughly 60 years, that's the extent of which HBA has been designing some of the world's finest hospitality projects, hotels, restaurants, you name it. I would say over the last decade or two, my interest has shifted in designing what I believe to be experientially diverse and engaging hotel projects, and some of the stuff that we're doing in different parts of the world is quite central to the discussion we're going to have today. So I really look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And over to you, Ramy, next. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ramy Elnagar. I am the co-founder of WhiteMirror. We are a sort of consultancy that looks at the future of well-being. So we work with a big variety of clients around the world in digital, experiential, in hotels and spas. And we actually gather people like Rahul, Tasha, and Samantha to kind of help them imagine the future of well-being. And then we try to build interventions that get closer and closer to the future that we're imagining with them. We're London-based, and we have a sensory lab in Lisbon where we test the effects of light, of sound, of vibration, a variety of different sensory input on the brain, on the body, to really try to understand, like, when we use words like sensory design, how does it really impact the psychophysiology of people? And then how can it narrow down the gap between the theory of what we're doing and the practice in real life? I'm excited about this panel.
So am I, thank you. And by no means least, Samantha, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this great panel today. I'm Samantha Van Exter, Head of Hotels for Montcalm Collection, and I'm representing our brand Inhabit today.
I'm super excited to come and visit some of your Inhabit properties here in London. So delighted to have you, Samantha.
Thank you.
And all the LinkedIn profiles have been popped into the chat. I do encourage everyone here to connect long after today's conversation. We have a lot to get through. We hope we will try and get through all of it today, but just in case, LinkedIn profiles are there, do carry on afterwards. So let's take a look at some context, because I think this is always useful to help frame today's conversation. And here are a couple of screen grabs that I have taken from a report that was published by Hotstats, which is now a Duetto company, and RLA Global just last month, which explores the wellness real estate market. Now, on the left-hand side, this is a year-on-year analysis of no wellness, minor wellness, and major wellness hotels. So in a nutshell, major wellness hotels, which is where properties that have wellness and leisure revenue annually that exceeds $1 million US, or which is equivalent to about 10% of total hotel revenue. These major wellness hotels have generated more than twice as much TRevPAR as no wellness hotels. TRevPAR, total revenue per available room. Minor wellness hotels, so that is hotels that have less than $1 million US in wellness revenue, or less than 10% of total revenue, also posted the highest rise in RevPAR growth and were the best performance in the luxury and upper upscale categories. On the right-hand side are some trends that the report has highlighted. And I'll just quickly read through these. Experiences outvalue opulence in luxury living. Wellness simplified, so this is a return to foundational health habits. Think fresh air, think natural movement. A new word for me, I have to admit, neuroarchitecture and biomimicry. I hope I'm pronouncing those words correctly. So that is optimizing spaces for cognitive function and using design that actually imitates natural processes. So I think one of the easiest examples that I can give here is like a spider web. And finally, hotels are prioritizing sleep for repeat business. Now, on the next slide, here are some stories that we have recently published on Boutique Hotel News. If my team members can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So Neil Jacobs has recently announced his departure from Six Senses, a brand that has been well known for its wellness designs and offerings. And when announcing his departure, he actually teased a new venture, which has been described as the return to wild origins. And I think that this links back to one of the trends in the report that we heard about, a returning to foundational health habits. So I'm curious to see what that might look like. And Earth Hotels, which is described as a design-conscious experiential boutique brand, is due to debut in Saudi Arabia next year. And this is a brand which blends sustainability and wellness together, be that in its design, in its amenities, or in its actual operations. Also launching next year is SBE's latest wellness and health brand called The Estate, which I think within itself, the launch itself signals a move towards a highly curated and super tailored experience, because this brand is anchored around longevity. And so the aim here is that we're actually, or the product itself, the brand itself, is going to help prevent and treat conditions that reduce lifespan. So I hope that gives some context as to why we're here and what has been happening in the market. And I want to kick off today's conversation with a question to Tasha, because as I imagine you've spoken to a lot of people, Tasha, with your research, and I'm just curious what you have learned about well-being in the word, in its actual definition. What is your understanding of well-being, and perhaps what are those common misconceptions that we have about it?
Yeah, it's a really ideal place to start, right? What are we even talking about with health and well-being? I often go back to the World Health Organization's definition of health. Back in 1946, they published a report that said that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So a state of complete well-being, let's just look at how high of a bar that is. They did not hold back complete well-being. And not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And you mentioned, what are some misconceptions that people have? And I think when it comes to health and well-being, wellness, et cetera, we miss that there's actually two halves of true health. There's the half that's the absence of disease, the absence of infirmity. You might even say like the absence of pain, of injury, of things that we don't want in general. Like you were just mentioning longevity. Maybe we want to slow down aging, things like that, right? That's one half of health. And there's a whole other half of health, which is complete well-being, physical, mental, social, and so on. And so I think a really big opportunity when it comes to design, whether that's physical design or the design of experience and things like that, is to tap into what would it mean to help people access that half of health. And a lot of properties and a lot of wellness tourism, a lot of like different kinds of experiences that people have when they visit different properties are already playing into that part of health, but we don't recognize it that way. We don't leverage it that way. So I think one of the biggest opportunities, both in the world of hospitality and just as a collective for the world in general, is to recognize that health is not just when we don't have the things that we don't want. Health has to be the presence of the things that we do want. And I will say, what the heck is well-being? I get to ask people all over the world, what does well-being mean to you? And as you all can imagine, the answers are incredibly diverse, incredibly fascinating. They do cohere around some themes, though. Things like people say that well-being is having a sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of influence and efficacy over things that matter to them, being able to contribute to something bigger than themselves, having a sense of belonging, having things that they're interested in and curious about that pull them forward into their future, right? Access to beauty and nature. These are things that people describe as being well-being. So when you start to recognize that those things are part of health, meaning, purpose, contribution, belonging, it starts to reorient how you think about how you design your spaces.
Thank you, Tasha. I think that's a great overview of, as you mentioned, what are we actually talking about today? And Ramy, I understand that you not just support hotels, but other industries as well. And I think it's always quite fascinating to hear what's actually happening from outside of the sector, and maybe how we might be able to apply learnings from other industries to hotels, to hospitality. So what are you seeing other industries outside of hotels in terms of embracing that health and well-being aspects in terms of the design elements?
I think if you think about space, I mean, space is space everywhere you are, right? Whether you're in a vehicle or in a store or in a hotel. So there's a guiding principle for us that I love. It's the idea of like what's called ontological design. Like we design the world the way it designs us back. So there's like this feedback loop between us and the world. And yet sometimes like we notice that well-being is not optimized in a lot of spaces around us. And the world, as we saw from the video at the beginning, is getting more and more stressful by the day. So it becomes like the social responsibility for everybody to design with well-being in mind. And there's something that Tasha says that I love, is the idea that if a product or a space is not actively supporting your well-being, it's by default like doing you harm. And I'm a big believer in that. And so when you look at outside of the hospitality space, we're noticing more and more vehicles and automotive brands are having conversations around like what's the difference between a smart vehicle and a thoughtful vehicle. How can it move away from better, faster, stronger to a vehicle that is there to help you with road rage, to help lower down your anxiety in long drives? Is there a way for the vibrations in the seats to lower down your heart rate? Is there a way to help kids in electric vehicle in the back to pass out? Because as a parent, when you're driving electric vehicles, for instance, you drive something about 5 to 7 times more because there's no vibration in the back of the vehicle to get the kids to fall asleep. So can we design sonic soundscapes, like functional soundscapes, in the back of the vehicle to get the kids to sleep, but not the driver in the front? And there's a lot of interesting sort of like empathetic use cases within the automotive space. Another area that's fascinating for us, we had a presentation a couple of months ago at the Pepsi sort of like innovation days. And one of the conversation was about this concept of functional feasting. Like how do you design into the things you drink, the things you eat, this idea of like wellness embedded into it, but still within like preserving your sense of taste. So you have anything from adaptogenic drinks all the way down to water infused with melatonin that you can then combine with a sonic soundscape to help people improve their sleep hygiene before they go to bed. And I saw this thing that I love quite recently called Pretty Tasty Tea. And it's this idea of like, how can you combine function and beauty? And what they offer is this idea of like collagen infused drinks. So it starts to kind of like answer the question you asked us before we started this panel of like, can you combine function and beauty within the same range? And I think they do it really well. And finally, a sister industry to hospitality is the thermal world. We're noticing more and more that there's a lot of demand for rethinking the thermal bathing experience and almost combining the ancient Roman experience with the newest technologies that are coming in, but in a way that begs the question, like, can technology show us aspects of nature and make the invisible visible in ways that we haven't thought about before? And we get commissions, anything from like virtual forest bathing experience, where technology shows you these like invisible things and fractals and these spatial sound experiences that it's really hard to do unless you've been to the Amazonian rainforest, for instance, all the way down to rethinking like what is contrast bathing when you're adding light, sound, vibration to it. So the thermal bathing world is asking the big question of like, what is the future of wellness sanctuaries?
Thank you, Ramy. I actually want to bring Tasha back in here because we spoke about, I think it was the healthcare sector, and how they are prescribing arts-based experiences. Could you come in on what other industries in terms of the healthcare are doing around health and well-being, and perhaps what we can apply to hotels in that respect?
Yes, there's a phenomenon, a model of care called arts on prescription. It's a branch, if you're familiar with social prescribing, that's in many countries around the world, but it's specifically prescribing experiences in arts or cultural experiences or experiences in nature as part of patients' treatment, as part of their health and well-being regimen. And sometimes it's a very clinical approach, like prescribing singing to help respiratory health. But most often we're seeing it used to address what I mentioned earlier, people's lack of a sense of well-being. So being used in a lot of mental health contexts, helping people to address depression, anxiety, and it's anything from, live music in a community to taking an art class to dance classes to, hikes in nature. If you can imagine an arts and culture experience in your community, these are the kinds of things that people are literally prescribing, in some cases in the US even being covered by, beginning to be covered by insurance, or some interesting ways in which the funding of this process is being worked out. And what I like to share with people who are outside of the healthcare industry is, just the general concept of like, if people are literally prescribing experiences with arts and culture and nature in order to improve people's health, what does that mean for the things that you are doing in your spaces? What does that tell you about the effects that your spaces could have on people, the ways that you could talk about the spaces, the ways that you might be able to optimize and leverage the things that you do in order to improve health and in order to open up opportunities for people to have an experience or to even have a perception of their experience that they're not having right now. And if you all want to know more about arts and prescription, there's a free resource on my website. I'll make sure that I can get that to you all too.
Thank you, Tasha. Rahul, let's bring you in here because Ramy mentioned just a moment ago that thermal bathing is currently being rethought or reimagined, and how can we bring more perhaps technological aspects into thermal spas, and what does that mean for the experience? So let's bring this into design now. And Rahul, how are you seeing broader wellness trends now shape spatial planning and interior design today?
Quite extensively. I think moving from an age where every hotel had, let's say, a gym and a spa maybe, and those were sort of almost like entertainment spaces rather than curated for your sensory well-being. I think most of the hotels especially the ones that we're designing, I wouldn't say most, but many of them, and the trend is quite significantly shifting, the focus being on how do you create spaces which are not sensory overloads? How do you create spaces where your nervous system feels calm, it feels safe, it feels engaged in a way that, you're not, the scents in the perfumes in those spaces aren't giving you a headache, or the music is in the background, yet it kind of makes you feel safe, and it doesn't, want you to put earplugs in your ears. So it's moving away from actually shaping the floor, wall, ceilings of a space to actually seeing how you can engage all your senses in a way that your nervous system feels calm and safe. And that extends to, I'll make a great example. I was recently in Singapore and I went to see the BHN Hotel, and it's literally the entire public space is 50 shades of white, right? It's all white color and no other color in it. And at the far end of this is it's a very narrow plot, and at the far end when you walk in is this entire greenhouse at the back, right? And it's got flowers and this is just the natural fragrances of green, like biophilia, like you were talking about. It's a very calming experience. It just feels like the outside world is outside, I'm in a safe sanctuary. And what that does to and this hotel is smack in the middle of one of the most busiest parts of Singapore, District 10, right? And outside it's all hustling and bustling Orchard Street. But when you're in there, it feels like I'm in this, almost like this absolutely contained space where nothing wrong can happen. And I just feel safe. And my memories of that are quite powerful. And I think there are many hotels that do that. And it's no longer about what is the finish on the floor, or what is the walls doing, where's the chandelier coming from, because all of that are extra when compared to you're not feeling safe in a space. So it's very intentional, it's very purpose driven, and it's very empathetic. And like how Tasha was saying, health is about, it's not the presence of the things you don't want, and I think this hotel does it really well. And yes, they have a spa, they have a gym, but really the entirety of that hotel engages you in a way that you feel safe and you feel contained, you feel cocooned in that. Yeah.
I mean, dare I say it, but I will. When the vibe isn't right, guests will be the first to raise their hand and say, "Excuse me, something's not right," and that can be
absolutely
in review,
absolutely
in feedback. That will have a knock-on effect with brand image and reputation. And I wonder that it's great to get the vibe right, and we're often putting the guest front and center of what we do, but we also have a responsibility for our staff members as well. And we're starting to see how, from the employer-employee dynamic, that health and well-being benefits are now ranking higher up the agenda for staff members. And so with that in mind, Rahul, I'm just curious to hear if back of house spaces are yet getting the same amount of attention to what we're doing front of house for our guests.
Look, the front of house and back of house cannot be 1:1, right? I mean, it's not financially viable, but we've seen in many of the hotels we're currently involved in designing, there is a lot of thought being given to the back of houses for it to be just more than comfortable. It's got better lighting, it's got better music playing, it's got better finishes, and given the long hours, which is very normal for people to work in the hospitality industry, I think it's a significant shift in the way staff are being engaged in those back of house spaces. So yes, a lot of thoughts being going into that.
Mm-hmm. And to Ramy's point earlier, I think there's a lot of space that is under optimized, and should we start to optimize it, we might find better productivity, better focus, better engagement amongst our staff members, but also our guests too. I'm curious to bring Samantha in here to actually talk about what the guests are looking for when they actually do come and visit hotels. Are you seeing any trends, Samantha, around guest demographics and how they tune in with your hotel, be it certain amenities are they looking for? What are you seeing?
Eloise, I would say that I absolutely agree with what Rahul was saying, because we are experiencing exactly the same. The travelers of today are seeking more than just a place to sleep. They want an extension of their own lives. They want to continue their well-being routine and journey seamlessly. So whether they're coming from London or internationally, they no longer want to put their life on hold. They want to eat well, move mindfully, and feel grounded. So without the typical stop-start narrative of traditional hotel stays, I go for work, I stop training, I stop eating well. I think that's changed completely. So they want to incorporate it into their daily lifestyle and routine.
I think you're right with the extension part, and I would argue that we now need to be more innovative in being better than.
Absolutely.
In that we're so accustomed to our home life and our home environment. When we go to a hotel, in some instances, it's to relax, it's to escape, it's to feel something unique. So how can that experience now do one up than our
Absolutely.
life?
And I think it's simple things like mattresses, linen, towels, yoga mats, all the equipment you provide, all the amenities you provide your guests. Generally, the guests of today, they have great mattresses at home. They've got great linen at home. They've got all types of sleep mechanisms. So we need to think ahead of the guests and be able to give them something more than they can get at home. Absolutely.
And when the team were creating the Inhabit brand, what were some of those key moments, those key pillars when it comes to that decision-making process? What was integral for inclusion? And maybe
when creating Inhabit, we focus on cultivating an urban retreat, so a sanctuary, an oasis, a kind of true embodiment of slow living in the heart of the city. And our design is deeply influenced by the desire to create a calming environment. So we use a lot of natural materials, biophilic design, and soothing palettes, just to create and encourage restoration and reflection. We wanted to break away from the typical lifestyle hotel where, buzzy and busy were the key words. And in Inhabit, we really wanted to give the guest the feeling that buzzy does not need to feel busy.
I like it a lot. Tasha, bringing you in here because I've heard things around sensory overload. So trying to design without going too overboard. I'm hearing slow living and slow travel. I'm hearing restoration, all soothing, calming experiences. So what does current research actually tell us about the impact of design, of creation, of cultural experiences and other sensory experiences on our bodies? What's the actual effect?
Oh, we could talk all day about, we could nerd out together about this, and Ramy can participate in that with just as much rigor and vigor. But yeah, we know for sure that these kinds of things that we might intuitively interpret as being calming or relaxing or restorative have measurable effects on our brains and bodies. You can see that in fMRIs and EEG. You can see that in lowered heart rates. You can see it in like skin conductance, and you can watch people's stress levels literally change physically. And we see it in a lot of qualitative research about people's feedback and how they felt before and after an experience. And sometimes that's something that's happening in their brain and body just during that experience. And of course, you all know, like after you have a restorative experience, sometimes that can continue. So in a study that I was just doing in the last month, we saw people like spend time in a certain kind of room that was designed to relax them, and we saw that their heart rate was lowered while they were there, but it was still lowered after they left and went back to work. It was still lower than when they had first come in. So we know that these things that we might intuit can benefit us, have been proven to benefit us. And these things, of course, are not, some of these things are really universal. Like humans across cultures and geographies tend to like biophilic design, things that echo nature, fractals, lines that echo nature versus, straight edges and things like that. But there are also things that are culturally affected, things like our interpretations of various colors. The color red in some cultures is extremely positive, and other cultures can feel overstimulating or aggressive, So these kinds of things can be culturally determined, and there's ways to work with that and to research that and measure that. And then things, of course, can be individual, as far as people who are neurodivergent might need and really want a certain type of environment, where people who are neurotypical might want a different kind of environment, extroverts versus introverts, people who are sensory overloaded versus people who are sensory seeking, and they need more stimulation in order to feel like they are thriving and have well-being. So there's ways to adapt these things to different populations. And I'm seeing Graham's note in the chat, how if we lack the capacity to offer in-house health and well-being services, I think a really big opportunity is, yes, we can think about neuroarchitecture and how you literally design your space, and there's ways that we can connect you all with people that can help you do that. And there's also ways to reimagine what you're already doing. How is what you're already doing affecting people's health? How can you optimize that, leverage that, talk about it differently, refine it to help people find even more and greater well-being?
Mm-hmm. Ramy, is there anything you would like to add here around, any trends that you're seeing in research about what the sensory experience is in terms of design, in terms of lighting, sound, vibrations, etc.? What does that have on our bodies, and maybe what are you seeing amongst your hotel clients that are actually taking that on and trialing it or embodying it?
I think Tasha and I, back in December, had the chance to work with the team behind Novak Djokovic's upcoming Hush Hush thing that we'll talk about at some point next week. But it was interesting to see people inside a closed container. And Tasha hit on two things that are really, really crucial in sensory design. One is the idea of sensory congruency. So like when you add light and then sound and then vibration and scent, there's different ways to calibrate and use the research to allow people to drive these senses in a way that they feel like they're adding to each other as opposed to overstimulating. And the other one is around sensory profiling. Like when we've done research around vibrations and vibrotactility, when you touch someone and they can get a bit jumpy versus someone where you put your hand on them and they don't even just budge. I think this is the interesting thing about sensory profiling. It's like, how can we learn more beyond like, do you want the sea view or, like just certain amenities and how you choose a room? Is there a way to learn more about guests and optimize the room in a way that helps them get closer to their sensorial profile? That's one. And there's just like small interventions. Like if you take a bedroom, for instance, where I am in this room, we know there's something called the first night effect. So hotels are just not built for you to sleep. When you go in the room, your brain goes cheetah because it's just in a new space, it's not used to it, and it's not feeling safe. So Rahul's point about safety is crucial. Like, first of all, we have to downgrade you, downaccelerate, just really ground you in the room. And I've been fascinating with little things that you can do in the space. Like, we've been hacking the dimmer in the room to go like bright, dim, following breathing patterns to help people doze off before they sleep. Or even like just when you wake up at night, the color under the bed, if it can go from white to red or anything in the amber spectrum, to stop your brain from going alert, but actually to continue the melatonin so you can go to the bathroom and then come back to bed and just no disruption in your sleep. Because when people think of the word technology or senses, it's like a refurb of the whole space. But actually, the sensory interventions can be done simple, cheap, and really intentional in a way just to say, like, what am I trying to do in this bedroom? I want you to feel safe. I don't want to interrupt your sleep when you wake up. And maybe your brain is working too fast before you go to bed. Can you breathe with the room? And can the music and the lighting change just to doze you off? And I think that's more than any guest would want.
The number of times where I travel a lot and the first night I struggle to settle in, and it's a new environment, and I personally would benefit from this a lot, and I think Rahul's in agreement here that if we will benefit it from ourselves, then I'm sure guests will too. Rahul, let's bring you in here then, because I think you first mentioned that hotels are now moving beyond the spa and beyond the gym. And Ramy gave a great example there of what's actually happening in room. But what are you seeing your hotel clients and brands doing in terms of actually integrating health and well-being into the whole guest journey, not just specific spaces and types of amenities?
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, and I'm going to try and verbalize it as best as I can, is trying, very importantly, trying to create a sense of calm. And through sense of calm comes the sense of safety, the sense of just slowing down. Is how do you encourage, how do spaces encourage people to slow down? And honestly speaking, it's not about the designs at all. It's not about what your floor looks like or what your ceiling looks like. It's not even that. It is about how your primate senses engage in those spaces. So you look at a hotel as literally a container for human experiences, right? And what are the most powerful human sensory organs is a sense of smell and a sense of hearing. And sight is very ephemeral. What you see, you forget very quickly. But your what you smell can stay with you. 30 years later, you might remember your grandmother because someone walked past the street wearing the same perfume she wore. And I think that's the power of spaces, is to be able to both create memories that grounds you in that space, that calms you, and that familiarity brings about a sense of safety and obviously memory creation. So many of there's a whole bunch of hotels that the major operator brands, still driven by what the hotels look like, but there's a whole genre of other hotels that really don't, they pay a lot of attention to design, don't get me wrong, but a lot of attention is given to what the space smells like. And I'm going to take another example. Last summer I was in New Orleans in the US, and I stayed in this, what I believe to be an extraordinary hotel, which is a church converted into a hotel. It's called Peter and Paul Hotel. And very simple designs, nothing extraordinary, but just the focus was on what really matters in that space. The fragrance throughout the hotel was just extraordinary. It wasn't overwhelming. It didn't give you a headache, but it just stayed with you. When you walked out of the hotel, you could still smell the space. The linen was absolutely out of this world. The sleep was amazing. So once you've taken care of all of those basics, I think everything else is extra.
It's probably why some hotels or hotel brands are so fantastic at storytelling, because ability to tap into, if not 2 of the 5 senses, or and some, so to speak. Ramy, I'd like to come back to you here, because you've touched on some quite advanced concepts in terms of, for instance, technological components of truly understanding the impact of perhaps sound or vibrations on our bodies, or whatever that might be or look like. When you are looking to introduce something that is quite innovative and certainly health focused, what are those barriers that you often come across? Because especially if you have a brand, and I'm going to say particularly a luxury brand that has a legacy about it and very loyal members, there can be some apprehension around introducing something that is so advanced and forward thinking. So how are you dealing with that conversation?
I have to put in 2 disclaimers here. One, I am not complaining in what I'm about to say, because innovation is a translational work and it takes a lot of people around the same table to compromise. And the second thing is, when we use the word technology or sensory design, same with the example of the bedroom, like, can the dimmer be hacked, but then the interior remains the same? Can we put vibrations in the mattress so it doesn't even change the aesthetic? So I've been off social media for 5 years and I do not want technology in my environment, in my spa. What's the whole point of trying to take this thing and then expanding it into a screen if it's going to have the same effect as the one that you have in your pocket? So that's my big disclaimer when we talk about technology and sensory design. But I find that the closer we work with an architect, the closer we work with an interior designer to help us really wrap it around and make it as seamless and as hidden as possible, the easier it is for us to have this conversation. But to focus on the barriers, so one element of it is just the experimentation factor. So when we think about redesigning a sauna for a way to amplify the contrast therapy, or if you want to build an immersive wellness aspect inside a hotel to rethink the way the wellness venue looks like, or if we're building a virtual assistant on your app that is your wellness companion that is there to support you and to help you. In a lot of these examples, the capex question comes to mind of like, oh, it's going to be a big investment. It's going to be too, like, we need to refurb everything. And it really starts with a culture of experimentation. And that for me is the first barrier to adoption. Is like, let's just think small. Let's take a mock-up room, a mock-up part of the spa, and really just try 2 and 3 small things, get the guests in and say, hey, is this really helping you? Do you enjoy this experience? Is this helping you sleep? Are you feeling this promise of awe and transcendence that we're giving you? So that's kind of like at a base level. The other element is like being brought in really early. So generally, it's a retrofit conversation. People come to us and say, hey, I've got an opening in 6 months and I want to build something immersive, or I want to add sensorial design to an amenity. Or so the earlier we can come in the conversation and have people like Tasha that are helping us understand like what is the state of sensory science at the moment, and what are just quick wins to help also like management and leadership go like, these sensory systems are interesting. Like, we're seeing a reward. And that's the last barrier, which is what is the quantifiable wellness ROI? So we have a lot of research around the psychophysiology. So Tasha and I can do a whole webinar about like what is the science showing and how good it is. But the commercial aspect, there's a bit of a breach in the middle. It cuts. Because what is the difference between a normal sauna and an immersive sanctuary that we're designing when it comes to, like an increase in revenue, an increase in like their sense of enjoyment? Does it increase your sense of loyalty from a differentiation and positioning standpoint? Do you look at the brand and go, yes, love what you're doing? Or you're like, yeah, just one more extra thing to your menu. So that wellness ROI is a big question for us. And we'd love to collaborate with anybody in this panel or even in the chat list around like, help us connect the sensory and the commercial, because we know guests feel good about it. We just need to drive the business case for it. I don't know how much of a barrier that is. It's more of a plea.
I'd like to, you just touched on the commercial aspect, so I'm going to jump to Samantha here. Are you seeing any specific commercial returns from any of the wellness focused initiatives at the Inhabit brand?
Absolutely. Wellness is no longer a niche offering, and it's a core expectation for many of our guests. So our investment in mindful design, plant-forward dining, sleep optimization, and just daily wellness programming has led to stronger guest loyalty, longer stays, and ancillary spend on experiences. And what we see is that guests are willing to pay a premium for a holistic stay. A stay that nurtures their mind and body rather than just a bed for the night. We've also seen increases in return visits and direct bookings from guests, that are seeking a sense of belonging and calm, which is central to Inhabit. And also our commitment to sustainability. We are proud to be one of the first B Corp certified hotels in the UK. And that demonstrates that we meet the highest standards of social and environmental impact. And what we see is that our guests are looking to align their experiences with their own values. And our approach centered on caring for the community and the planet translates directly into a stronger commercial performance because of that.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha. Tasha, coming back to you here, do you think we underestimate the value of health and well-being in its broadest sense? How can hoteliers better align their strategies to actually incorporate all the amazing things that we are talking about? There's actual evidence, right, that backs this up. So, I mean, my argument is clearly underestimated, but how can we better?
Yeah, I think, well, Ramy mentioned earlier that I'm typically reminding people, and architect Ty Farrow has said this, there are no neutral spaces. The space that you're in, it's not like, oh, you have the opportunity to advance, to affect health by designing and thinking about the design of your spaces. It's like, no, your spaces are already affecting people's health, whether you know it or not, whether you're measuring it out or whatever. The only option that any of us actually have is how intentional those effects are going to be and how optimized those effects are going to be. So, your place right now might be having a neutral effect. It might, in some cases, be having a harmful effect. It might be having a wonderful well-being effect that you're not measuring or not aware of because you're not thinking of the experience of that particular guest experience in terms of well-being. You might be thinking of it in terms of an amenity or in terms of something else, but it actually is having an effect on their health and well-being for reasons that you might not necessarily intuit, that have to do with some of the research around how culture and cultural identity affect our health, how art and aesthetics affect our health, how our sense of belonging and meaning affect our health. So, what I would say is, especially when it comes to barriers to this work, is always to think about, how am I defining health and well-being? Who do I think that, I am, and how, as far as like the organization that I'm here with, what is it that I think that I do? How might I not be picking up on the effects of the spaces that I have, both positive and negative? And how might I reimagine the things that I do in order to better understand them as health impacts? It's not always about aiming for really innovative technology or aiming for luxury. Sometimes it's aiming for, how do I understand my space as a meaning-making space, as a space where people come and they make meaning here, like Rahul mentioned, like they make memories here. They connect with themselves, their sense of identity and who they are. They might get a chance to reimagine who they are as a result of having encountered your space. They might leave feeling like a different person than when they came in, the same way that we might all have an experience of having done that at some cultural, live music is really important to me, or other kinds of experiences in our lives, that we walk in one person and we walk out feeling like we're a slightly different person or a radically different person, right? That's the opportunity that a lot of spaces have. It's not always about luxury and technology, although those things are really exciting to me too, and there's so much potential there. But it's also about the story that you're telling yourself about what it is that you do and what you can offer, and the story that you're allowing guests to be able to tell as a result of being in your space.
Mm-hmm. And whilst we're here, Tasha, I'm just going to read out your response to one of the questions in the chat here. How does artwork in the hotel space benefit the customer journey and experience? And how can we use art to enhance the hotel space further for guests? And Tasha's reply, there's great research around the benefits of visual art, from the presence of art to reducing hospital stays, such as speeding healing, to increasing prescriptions of museum visits for mental health. Much of this research can be readily extrapolated for hospitality context. So thank you, Tasha, and for the question, Frankie. Rahul, curious to hear your thoughts around the new frontiers or the next frontiers of designing for well-being. What do you see, or what are you seeing?
I don't know what the new frontiers are, to be honest. I mean, it's like a evolving story, but definitely there's a focus on bringing health and wellness to center stage, as opposed to being compartmentalized into a spa and gym. It's about intentionally and purposefully creating spaces that allow you to question, how am I feeling in here? You know, how am I feeling? Am I at peace? Am I feeling peaceful? Am I feeling engaged? Am I feeling in a way connected both to myself and the larger environment around myself? And obviously there are no sort of mathematical markers to measure all of this, and I think how you feel is the best marker. And it's like, if I don't feel safe walking in a dark alley, I won't walk in the dark alley. It's that simple as it is. So a lot of these very psychologically but very true and very real questions are at the center of designing, because that's what intentional living is all about, is being present, is being aware of what you're taking and what you're giving to that space. And a lot of the hotels are also starting to be bridges between communities. And we were designing this resort in Goa in India a while back, where every staff in the hotel is a person trained from the community in where the hotel is located. So it's a bridge that engages to communities and providing very authentic and real experiences while supporting the growth of those communities. And I think hotels have the capabilities of having health impact, not just on the individual, but the larger collective audience that it inhabits. And I think it's a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that is right at the core of it.
I was going
at
to
least
say,
the hotels that some of them we're working on, yeah.
let's not forget that we can talk about design within the literal bricks and mortar of properties, but there's so much that can extend beyond the four walls when it comes to community-based initiatives. And you know, maybe this is a call that there's more that we can do offsite as well, to help bring the health and well-being aspects into the guest experience.
Yeah.
I am going to finish today's conversation with a question to all of you. And this is I suppose, an advice piece perhaps, or maybe get your thinking caps on and look into the future in terms of what can we do better? How can we truly facilitate a stronger collaboration, not just on property, but off property too, to help unlock the full value of what I mean by designing for health and well-being? What is the investment case here for hotels? I'm gonna, for ease, I'm gonna move from left to right as per my screen. So Rahul, I'm gonna kick off with yourself, and then we'll go to Ramy, Samantha, and Tasha. So Rahul, you first.
Eloise, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? I missed the first part of it. I was reading some of the comments on the side.
There's a lot of comments. It's great. It's a shame we're not quite able to get through all of it. So Rahul, what's the investment case for incorporating health and well-being into hotels, and how can we collaborate better to unlock the full value of that?
I think it's tremendous. If you just look at it at an individual level, the amount of health awareness, both mental, physical, spiritual health, it's not left to chance anymore. It's quite central. People, we as individuals in our own way have incorporated in our own ways on a daily level into our lives. And like Samantha was mentioning, it's no longer about forgetting about all of those aspects when you come and check into a hotel. It's you just carry your lifestyle with you wherever you go, however you go. And not every hotel will be able to meet all of your needs, but at least the intention is there to meet those needs. So it's very central, and it's going to be as basic as having a restaurant in your hotel.
Thank you. Ramy, what are your thoughts on this?
Got a lot of ideas that are fighting to become the one piece of the answer, but I'm gonna make it more on a personal level. So when I think of the experiences that have marked me in a lot of the hotels and spas that I've gone to, especially in an attention economy where everyone's doing luxury or everyone's doing technology or everyone has the best X or best Y, for me, it's the things that break through the attention barrier and really land in the behavioral change. And what I mean by that is I have connections to a couple of hotels in my life that changed the way I sleep because of the intentionality behind the way they use light or the little drawer and what they curated in that drawer for me that now has made it into my home. So there's almost like there's a totem or there's a piece of them that lives with me now. And I think that's one element of it that I find phenomenal. And the other side is peak experience or the power of awe. So when you go into an immersive experience, it could be with technology, with water, with light, or pure darkness. If it breaks through and you have a moment when you realize something about yourself, and that's why I think spas will evolve into these sanctuaries, because you will go there and spend 1, 2, 3 days and come out of it going, I've learned something new about myself. And these things for me are what really differentiates the transformation. It's like I leave thinking, you've given me a piece of myself I never thought about. And that, I think, where the power sits, not necessarily in the little amenities or details.
Thanks, Ramy. Samantha, what do you think is the investment case for incorporating all of this into hotels, and where's the opportunities for greater collaboration?
I mean, I definitely think it's the way forward. And I was speaking to a team member the other day, and I compared it to the DJ. 20 years ago, every lifestyle brand needed to have a DJ. And if you did not have a DJ or programming, you were not a lifestyle brand. And we moved from the DJ to wellness and sleep. And for me, when I stay in a hotel and I have a good night's sleep, I go home, and that's luxury for me. And so when we think back to the hotels and the heavenly bed and mattress toppers and spray pillow mists, and those were all the basics. And I think we've moved on from that. Guests want to travel with purpose. So it's an expectation, and partnering with the right partners, the right wellness partners, is critical for the success, I think, of any hotel group. And programming for your guests, not for just having a program.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this is what Tasha was saying earlier, that there's so many opportunities to tap into so many different groups of people and their needs. It's trying to refine that and figuring out perhaps who your target audience is and how do we build on that. Tasha.
And I think I'd say one more thing: get your team members involved. If your employees, if your colleagues, your team members understand the programming and are part of it, so invite them to join it and really become part of it, so they can be part of the guest journey and experience.
Thank you. Tasha, what are your thoughts on the investment case for bringing health and well-being into hotels, and again, how can we work better?
Well, I dropped a free resource that I want you all to have in the chat. So I'll make this really quick. As an addition to those things, is to think about the ripple effects of people, of like helping people to have a better sense of their quality of life, of having better health and well-being. One of the opportunities that I mentioned in this resource that we don't consider enough is that part of well-being is feeling like you can contribute and have efficacy regarding things that matter to you. The things that keep you up at night. Sometimes people go to hotels and like, I want a good night's sleep, but sometimes the things that keep us up at night are things that none of us choose to be mollified into apathy over, right? They're things that really matter to us. And what we need for our well-being is not to forget about them, but to be given a sense that we can do something about them. That's also something that hospitality can help people with, is having a sense of contribution. So imagine how that helps people to feel well while they're in your space, and how things like that, signature experiences like that, opportunities like that, ripple out from the experience that people have at your hotel into a better community, a better world, as people feel better and feel better able to contribute to the world around them.
Thank you, Tasha. And I'll take a moment now to say thank you to all our panelists, Samantha, Ramy, and Rahul. I'm sure this conversation could have splintered off into many different directions. I'm actually pretty impressed that we've kept to time today. So thank you for your insights. We are going to leave this webinar open for an extra couple of minutes because quite a fair bit has been popped into the chat today in terms of conversation starters, topics, questions. We've got all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers and some of the resources that Tasha has shared too. Do take the time to follow up, and of course spend the time at the end to complete our survey. We would be greatly appreciated. Just some closing slides to run through before we say a final goodbye. We're taking a short break over the summer from our webinars, and we'll be back in September, the first of which is the 8th of September, with a webinar on boosting profitability with AI personalization. The whole series up on your screens now. You can see what's coming up later, one of which will be very relevant to today's conversation. Renovate or wait, timing hotel refurbishments in December. Would love to see you there. Further links on these about these webinars have been popped into the chat. Again, no cost to subscribe. Would love to have you join us later on in the year. And if you're interested in working with us, either across our digital events like these webinars or our in-person events too, do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Her details are up on your screen and also popped into the chat. So once again, thanks to our panelists for their time today. Thank you to Duetto for being a fantastic sponsor of these webinars. Look forward to seeing you all again in September. Enjoy your summer breaks if I don't speak to you guys before then. And wishing you all the best of luck with everything moving forward. So take care and see you all in September.